Here's Johnny. Hello there. For October the 29th, 2011, this is a book and a martini. This is a martini, and this is a whole lot of makeup. Cheers. You may be wondering why I am made up like the wrestler Sting. Well, it's Halloween, and it is also the theme of this week's book and a martini. Want to tell you a story. When I was a kid, I grew up in the house of my granddad, and in a local context, Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada. My granddad was a really well-loved man. He'd been the mayor of the city for 12 years, and at the time of this incident, he'd been the member of parliament, which is the equivalent of being a congressman in the United States, for 13 years. This is when I grew to really admire my granddad. On Saturday nights from 6 p.m. until 7 p.m., the CBS affiliate in Duluth, Minnesota, which came across the border on cable — Canada had cable before the U.S. actually — there was All-Star Wrestling, the AWA. I used to wonder, why it was that the champion of the AWA, Vern Gagne, was this sort of middle-aged, kind of lumpy, balding guy. Why he wasn't able to beat, these great champions, these like big studs, like Dr. X and Nick Bockwinkel and Mad Dog Vachon and so forth. Years later, I found out Vern owned the company. Anyway, but at the time, I was like 12 or 13 or whatever, and I thought wrestling was real. Well, wrestling is real, but I'll get to that. So anyway, so watching All-Star Wrestling on the Saturday night, there's Bull Bolinsky. Was this big old guy in a vest. He would go woo woo, like that was his catchphrase. So he's interviewed backstage by Bernie Carbo. I think that was his name, or wait a minute, no, Bernie Carbo was an outfielder for the Cincinnati Reds. Anyhow, Bull Bolinsky says that, next week I'm going to be up there at the Fort William Gardens, and I'm going to see my good friend Bert Badani. What? That was my granddad's name. He's one of the great wrestling fans. I can hardly wait to see my friend. And I thought, holy cow, this is getting me like major props in school. Because my granddad was a big wrestling fan. He never actually took me to one of the shows. He was busy in Ottawa doing politics stuff. But I mean, I was like seriously impressed that a wrestler knew who my granddad was. Time goes on, and people find it kind of strange that I'm a wrestling fan. I mean, I review books. I review these like little plaintive novels where people stare out windows and see the rain drip down and see their reflection in the windows and see that as a metaphor for their own life. Do a lot of that. Review poetry, review non-fiction stuff by like serious guys like Chris Hedges and Christopher Hitchens and so on. Have some interesting books coming up for you, by the way. One sec. So I think, well, why are you a wrestling fan? Why are you a fan of like this fake sport? Here's the thing, two things. One, as Bret Hart said, in a wrestling match, the outcome is predetermined, but you know what? The pain is real. Second, when I went into acting, I've had 100 opening nights on stage as an actor, a director, a writer. And I finally realized that, you know what? You know who the greatest actors are on earth? Wrestlers. I mean, imagine playing a part 250 nights a year, on the road, almost all one-night stands, with serious travel in between, where you're going to play a character, and if you're sitting in the McDonald's or the motel coffee shop, you can rarely afford a hotel. You better be staying in character because people don't want to see the good guy, the baby face, sitting down and clinking glasses with the bad guy, the heel. Okay, so you're in character. And you know what? Laurence Olivier never had John Gielgud throw him through a table or hit him in the head with a television monitor or a steel chair. And yes, the chairs are real. So you're doing this 250 nights a year. You're doing that without health care. You're doing that without a pension. You're doing that without a union. You've got no actors' equity to back you up. You're doing it for the love. Okay? The Mickey Rourke movie, The Wrestler, got most of it, I think. Didn't get all of it, though. I don't think that it quite got the fun. The fun. Wrestlers don't live long. I remember crying my eyes out when I was a kid when a wrestler by the name of Hercules Cortez died. He was the tag team partner for Red Bastien. Red, by the by, passed away only a few months ago. He was one of the lucky ones. He got to live to the ripe old age of into his 70s. But he and Hercules were in a car crash, and Hercules died, and I bawled. I cried the way I cried when Bobby Kennedy died, for God's sakes. But no, they play through pain. A lot get addicted to painkillers because, as I say, it's not like you've got a health care plan. You've got no disability insurance happening for you. So why do that? Well, maybe why do anything dangerous? Why do boxers box? Why do football players football? You know, why do guys who played hockey continue to play hockey in beer leagues, you know, and get injured? Why do people ski? Okay, I'm at the top of the mountain, now I'm at the bottom of the mountain. Oh, I broke my leg. Oh, crap. Well, let's go back up on the chairlift and go back up here, and we're at the top of the mountain, we're going to go to the bottom of the mountain. It's not like the view changes. I've never understood skiing, but I understand wrestling. God knows I never did it. I was the skinny kid. The other thing is that wrestling has spawned an awful lot of very, very good books, which is why we're talking about it on A Book and a Martini. And you know what? I'm really loving the makeup. God love you, Sting. When I first met my stepson, Bradley, this is how he saw me. I was working a haunted hayride gig at Halloween, and all 6'3" of me went, "Hi, nice to meet ya." You got to admit, it's an impressive way to meet a kid. Anyhow, great books. I've read most of them. I don't pretend to have read all, and I'm going to give you 3 recommendations, okay? Not necessarily by the biggest names. I read Hulk Hogan's, and it was typical of Hogan. Hogan is probably the biggest star that there has ever been in wrestling, as he'll be happy to tell you. Hogan's book, unfortunately, is full of... this is family content, so it's full of bull byproduct, shall we say. I love how his famous match with Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3, the Pontiac Silverdome. Every time Hogan tells the story, the crowd gets bigger, as does Andre. I think there was actually about 70,000 there. Hogan's blown that up to over 100,000. Andre the Giant weighed about 500 pounds. Hogan has him up to 800 now. I mean, you know, by the time this is done, the people, there will have been as many people at WrestleMania 3 as there are in mainland China, and Andre the Giant will weigh the size of your average condominium. So Hogan's book, not great, but a few of them are. A series of good ones were written by Mick Foley. This isn't necessarily the best one, but it's the one I grabbed off the shelf. Foley is a big old teddy bear of a man. He's also an incredibly talented writer. I've got to know him slightly through Twitter and so forth. He's very funny. He's very honest. Reading Foley's books are like peeking into somebody's diary, quite literally. He has the art of the great biographer in that he's very honest. I also suggest that you pick up Foley's children's books. He writes very good children's literature. Cheers. Now, I also mentioned the funny side. If you want the funny side of wrestling, I'm going to recommend a website to you. wrestlecrap.com. Because here's the other thing about wrestling. And it boggles my mind, having a theater background and a writing background, that as popular as wrestling is, and at its peak in the late 90s, between WWE or WWF as it was then, Raw, and the since demised WCW Nitro, between them they were popping ratings of between 10 and 12. That means like 10% of the American population was watching wrestling. But it's done so badly so much of the time. Plot lines are dropped halfway through. Characters will do inconsistent things. People will make face-heel turns that make no sense, other than some guy in the truck didn't have any other idea. So, okay, Bill Goldberg, you're a heel this week, and next week you're going to be back to being a babyface because people didn't like you as a heel. Are we going to explain this? Oh, hell no. That's where WrestleCrap comes in. This happens to be the WrestleCrap book of lists. It's hilarious. It's an absolutely hilarious book. They also did a very good one. R.D. Reynolds, Blade Braxton, and The Death of WCW was a very, very good book that was also co-authored by Brian Alvarez. By the way, I also know wrestling writers. I was one for a while for PWTorch.com. I was the TNA correspondent. That's TNA initials, not boobies and buddies. Okay? That's the other thing. Only in wrestling would anybody ever name a company TNA. The best book, and unfortunately I don't have my copy to hold up to you. I've loaned it out to a friend. Bret Hart's book, Hitman. You know that, to say the least, I read a lot. Hitman, even if I wasn't a wrestling fan, is honestly one of the 5 best autobiographies I've ever read by anybody. It's the real deal. It really is the life of wrestling. The pain, the backstage politics, the affairs that Bret had, marriage failures, the story of his stroke, which thankfully he's come back from. I have rarely read any man just absolutely lay his soul bare on the page, and Bret can write too. There's one thing missing in the literature of pro wrestling. There hasn't been a great book written yet that I've seen, and I've looked, on women wrestlers. I don't call them divas or knockouts, because to me that trivializes them. But there isn't, and to me that's equally a fascinating life. So I took a look and I saw myself a market niche, and the next thing that I'm doing is that I want to do a book on it, on the ladies of wrestling who go through all the pain and the abuse, and the guys are absolute arseholes to them. Hope that didn't blow the family rating. So look for that. And if you happen to be a publisher and would like to buy it, I love you. Anyway, happy Halloween to you. And again, as always, as our old friend Tommy Snyder used to say, from all of us who work the late shift, good night, everybody.